Welcome to What a Creep, the show with Margot Donohue and Sonia Mansfield talking about creeps from the past to the present.
This is your quick guide to the biggest creeps, jerks, assholes, and losers, the best of the worst.
From two nice ladies who want the world to be a little less creepy.
Welcome back to What a Creep. This is Margot Donohue, and my cohort in creepitude, as always, is the amazing Sonia Mansfield. Hey, Sonia.
Hello, my friend.
Hello, my friend. We are the podcast that talks about creeps from the past to the present. Today, we have a Texas-sized creep. Which,
Ooh.
if you're outside of the U.S., that means big. They have big old creeps down there. This is a creepy murder that happened in 1980. It has some twists and turns to it. But before we get to that, and just so you know, if this is your first time listening to the show, we always end the show with someone who's not a creep. So you're not left feeling completely bummed out about the state of the world. We want you feeling a little bit uplifted at least, if not mostly.
Yes, I got someone for you.
Awesome. I don't know who it is. I want you to keep it a surprise.
Yeah, it's a surprise.
We are on Facebook. We do have a basic Facebook page, but here's the deal. We never check it. It's just a place where people go to complain about our language. We use salty language in this program.
Fuck yeah.
We're more interactive in our private Facebook group. On Facebook, you go type in What a Creep podcast group. You have to answer 3 questions in order to join. They're very easy. Just listen to the top boring shit at the top of the show and you'll pretty much get in.
It's not boring. How dare you?
How dare you, sir, ma'am?
How dare you? I said good day.
I said good day, sir. That's a callback to something we said off the air. That's going to really not resonate with people. Anyway.
I don't care.
We get punchy and on Friday afternoons when we haven't been able to talk all week. That's what it is.
That's right. I think that is exactly what it is. Normally we chat throughout the week and we didn't get to this week, so we're extra goofy. Yeah, we're extra hyper, extra goofy today. You're welcome.
We're on Twitter at CreepPod because somebody had What a Creep on Twitter for over 10 years and never used it.
You creep, give it to us.
Give it back. We're on Instagram at What a Creep Podcast, and we have an old-timey email, whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com. Send us your comments, suggestions, especially for creeps and also non-creeps. We often need help with the non-creeps. It's whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com. Also for stickers, if you would like some stickers, wherever you are on the planet of Earth, the both of us are looking outside the planet or on the bottom of the sea, but until they make that happen, you know, we're all stuck here together. We'll be happy to send some stickers to you wherever you are. And Sonia, tell them a quick bit about our website.
You can go to whatacreeppodcast.com and it's everything you ever wanted to know about our show, but we're afraid to ask. It has links to all of our episodes, and in those episode links are all of our sources, because we source every single episode, and you can see where we get all of our information. We pay for a lot of those subscriptions. That's what we use our Patreon money for, in case you're wondering, to support the journalists that are actually doing the work to help us put together the show. There's also a link to our merch shop. The holidays are coming.
Woo!
Buy stuff. Buy stuff. We have face masks and tote bags, T-shirts. They're super comfy. I've bought some. I started work on our new merch for the High Road Can Get Fucked. That is going to be on the site soon, and I'll share it on the Facebook group when it's finally live. But there's also a link to our Patreon page. You want to tell them about that, Margot?
Yes, I do. So we have our first 4 seasons on the Patreon page, Patreon. We also put out 2 bonus episodes a month. We have our first one for October coming out early next week. And then Sonia and I are meeting up at the end of November for my book launch. We're having
so fun.
Yes, I'm having a party. It's for my book Filmed in Brooklyn, and it's going to be on the 25th in Brooklyn. If any of y'all want to come to the party, send us an email, whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com. This is in the year of our Lord 2022, so if you're listening to this in the future, sorry, but
You missed the party. It was super fun.
We were thinking about you. You could still order the book.
I got drunk and made a scene.
I may have taken my clothes off for just a bit. What do I usually say after that? Oh, and we also get a newsletter.
Yeah.
Isn't that exciting? But
Yes.
look, we have some very affordable options there. And I'm sorry, I just want to thank Amanda, Kate, and Kira for joining us on Patreon. But we want to tell you this. Thank y'all so much. But if money is tight, we totally understand. If you could just leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts, or just honestly tell a friend about the show, or just enjoy it. That's all.
Yeah.
You know, we do this for the pleasure. We do this for the fun. We do this for the shits and giggles.
It's true.
All right.
Yeah.
My
Let's
friend,
do it.
Are you and your fancy new haircut ready for this story?
I don't know how fancy this haircut is, but I am ready for the story.
Well, we're going to be talking about hair because this is a story that takes place in 1980. And one of our people in the story has herself quite a perm going. Her name is...
Did you ever get a perm, by the way?
No, my sister did. And it was horrifying.
I got a perm and I don't know what I was thinking.
Everybody did. And
Yeah.
And they even did. So what year was that? Do you remember?
It must have been 85, 86.
Yeah. What were you thinking? This
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bad surprise. Teenage girl makes bad choices. Film at 11.
It started natural hair was like the thing in the 70s.
Yeah.
And then it was like curled hair, like the Dorothy Hamill wedge. And then it was like, then it was like the tight curls, which was the perm in in late 70s, early 80s. And then the 80s was kind of like big hair and, oh my goodness. But it's like, so late 70s is just kind of a weird time for fashion and hair. So here is our creep today, and the title is "The Murder of Betty Gore" by Candy Montgomery. People usually focus everything on Candy Montgomery. She's the one that lived. Betty's the one that died, and that's usually what happens. I really want to keep the focus on Betty,
Okay.
because she's the one that's gone. But we do have to talk about Candy because she's a real piece of work.
Of course.
Candy Montgomery was just another bored 70s suburban Texas housewife when she was tried for committing a crime so heinous, people still have difficulty making sense of it. The murder of Betty Gore, by the way, this was 1980. They were both 30 years old. I can't believe they were just 30. They were the subject of a TV series. One of them was for Hulu, starring Jessica Biel and Melanie Lynskey. It was called Candy. That just came out this year. And there's going to be a new HBO series next year starring Elizabeth Olsen and Jesse Plemmons. It's filming right now.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay. I have not seen the one on Hulu, but it is on my watch list now.
Yeah. It's pretty good. Jessica Biel is great. Melanie Lynskey's always amazing.
Yes, always.
And whoever did the wig work earned their money. What is unusual about Murder in 1980, which was treated also, I did a terrible job writing this. Let me just say this. Okay. What was so unusual about this murder in 1980? It was also, by the way, treated to a 1990 TV movie, which stars our forever old man crush, Brian Dennehy.
Shut up. I'm going to watch.
Killing in a small town.
I'd rather watch the TV. I'm going to watch the TV movie. Okay.
I'll fix the show notes so you can link to it. It's on YouTube, A Killing in a Small Town. That captures our imagination. Let's figure out today. The trigger warning, basically, it's murder and infidelity.
I am triggered.
Sources, yes. Candy, A Death in Texas. Candy Montgomery, her Wikipedia. Texas Monthly. It's there's 3 issues that came out in the early 80s, 1984. Excuse me, and it's Jim Atkinson and then John Bloom, who goes by the name Joe Bob Briggs.
Yes.
So he's the movie reviewer.
Yes.
He also is a writer. He writes a lot of true crime for Texas Monthly.
I did not know this.
No,
I learned something today.
Yep. Oxygen, they have an episode called Snapped. There's a show called Snapped, and she was an episode on
Yes.
there. A UPI report that I got that was from 1980. History versus Hollywood. Evidence of Love by John Bloom. I was up till 1 a.m. reading this thing. It was really
Ooh.
good. This YouTube channel called Armchair Investigator, and also YouTube channel I love called MsMojo.com.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I've seen that one.
Yeah. They do a lot of listicle kind of things. I put it on, when there's nothing on TV. All right. So it begins with, let's talk about first, it's Betty Gore. Let's begin with Betty. She was born in Kansas, and she was a really sweet lady. Her name was Betty Pomeroy, and she grew up not really in a religious family, but they were very kind of Midwestern, quiet family, nice values, farm kind of people. And she was the first person in her family to graduate from college, and it was a big source of pride for her. Mm-hmm. She married her math teacher, and his name was Alan Gore. He was a few years older than her, as you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
He was only like 4 or 5 years older than her.
Okay.
But her family was like, he's already like balding, and he seemed kind of boring and kind of stiff, but she was in love with him. And she was kind of high maintenance, I'm going to just say.
Okay.
She was, she had anxiety. She didn't like to be alone. She liked things the way she liked things. I wonder, it's hard. It's not fair to diagnose somebody.
Yeah.
But she was very specific about things. They need to be done a particular way. And she was taught to teach a particular way. And when they got married, he had a job in New Mexico. And so they moved to Las Cruces, New Mexico. And she thrived there. She had a group of students, and they were on the poorer side. They were Mexican-American students, but she loved them, and they loved her back. And she was very strict, but they liked her strict style. Mm-hmm. And Alan always had a job where he worked in technology and computers before they became a thing. He always seemed to have a job where he traveled a lot. He loved to travel, and he loved to travel for work. He could go for like a month at a time and be totally fine with it. No problem at all.
Yeah. Would she be fine with that?
No, she would freak the fuck out. She would call him. She would beg him to call her every day. She would have these kind of, I don't know if you would say panic attacks, but she would get very, very upset.
This sounds like a mismatch. If you need your husband to be around more often, then marrying a man who wants to travel for work is not the best choice.
Well, they're very young when they met each other. They only dated for a little while. It's one of those things like, you get up and you just move and you go someplace, and then all of a sudden you're alone with this person in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. She was such a popular teacher that she was nominated for the Who's Who in American colleges and universities. She was actually thriving. The only thing that was bothering her was Alan going away on these business trips.
Yeah.
One time when he was gone, she actually had an one-night stand with a fellow teacher. Yeah. When Alan came home, she confessed to him. And Alan apologized to her and said, "I'm so sorry. It's because I was gone. It's because you want me home more." And he said, I'm going to do better from now on.
Interesting response.
Yeah.
Not what I expected.
No, he forgave her. And he still would go out on the road, but she also said, like, I'm not going to, that was an anomaly. That'll never happen again. I promise you. But she started getting more and more sick when he would go on the road. And then she went to the doctor a lot. And a lot of it was stomach issues, which I would think be related to anxiety.
Sure.
But some of the things that she diagnosed herself with were appendicitis and ulcers. She also had very strong menstrual cramps. And as I said, she was hyper prepared for everything from teaching to homemaking, as well as baby making. When she wanted to have a baby with him, she made it so that she wanted to give birth at the exact middle of June to the exact beginning of July, right in that window, because that's when she would be off for the summer.
Oh, okay.
So she was like, so we got it, boom, dude, this is when it has to happen.
Right.
And he was like, well, he wants it to happen whenever it happens and blah, blah, blah. And she was like, no, everything, she was very rigid. I would say. Right.
Yeah.
He gets a job in Wiley, Texas. And when she moves there, at first she has a hard time with the school system. She shows up and it's open teaching. So they have big open classrooms. It's 2 or 3, 4, 5 times what she's used to. Just students everywhere. And it's multiple teachers in the room. And she thinks the students are really unruly. And they're much older than she's used to. They're 8th, 9th grade. And she's not, she's really not comfortable. And she has this habit of giving multiple detentions, for the slightest thing. And after a while, these parents are calling the school, my kid's never been in trouble ever. Because she would see, one kid would do something bad and she wasn't sure which one. So she would punish the whole room kind of thing.
Yeah.
The whole desk, that whole table, all of you are punished. You all have detention. And it's why the whole table? And so,
yeah.
So then she went from having a job to being a substitute to not being picked up at all.
Okay.
And that really was a blow to her ego because they
when she's
had experience.
An amazing, and an amazing teacher where she was before.
She was always promoted. She was always one of the best. And then she went someplace where they were not only did they not give her a full-time job, but they wouldn't even hire a substitute teacher. And they hired someone who only had, just came out of college versus her.
Right.
So she has this baby, and then Alan gets a job that pays more money, but he has to be on the road a bit more to make up for the smaller income. And the smaller income is $300 a month. It's pretty tight.
Yeah.
So Betty goes into a deeper depression. She's not really into being home all day. She loves her daughter, but she really likes being at school or having a job. And she calls Alan a lot when he is home at work. She calls him at the office a lot. When he goes on business trips, if he's gone for a long time, she'll call his boss and say, how come my husband has to be gone for so long? Yes, I know.
Don't do that. Look, being a stay-at-home parent isn't for everybody.
No,
but also
no shame.
Don't call your partner's boss.
You can't.
Don't do that.
No. And I'm not giving away, by the way, the names of their kids because
I
don't want to do that. Yeah. So after their birth of their first daughter, she did go into depression. It was postpartum, and the doctor did diagnose her with that. But he said, here, don't be on the pill anymore, but here's some Valium. That'll help you. And he also diagnosed her with heavy child syndrome, which I have no idea what that means.
Heavy child
syndrome.
I don't even know what that is.
And
okay.
For the next year, she went to the doctor almost every 3 months with the following ailments: fatigue, sinus issues, swollen glands, warts on her feet, chest soreness, fear of getting pregnant, back spasms, vaginal itching, laryngitis, fever, earache, and breast soreness, and anxiety.
That's a lot. Did she actually have those things though? Warts on your feet?
They took them out.
That's a real
plantar
thing.
warts. Yeah, I had those, by the way, because you can get them at your gym. I mean, I got them. This was 20 years ago. I'm sorry, that's gross, but they cut them out. But
some of those it's how it's hard to diagnose other than that she's telling them that she has it, and you should believe your patients when they're telling you those things, but like warts, that's a thing, that a physical thing that you could tell.
Right. She's anxious. She doesn't sleep well. She's not the most outgoing person. She has a hard time making friends. And then at some point, she and her husband they're trying to find a church to go to on Sundays because it's Texas. People go to church. And they both came from that kind of a background. Mm-hmm. Now let's enter Candy. You're a fine girl. Anyway.
That's Brandy.
I know my 70s.
I know you do.
Candace Lynn Montgomery was born in 1949. Overseas, these are both baby boomers, by the way. The post-World War II, she was an army brat. She was grew up all over the world, all over the place. Mm-hmm. She was also married in the early 1970s, and her husband was a guy that also worked in tech. And Texas Instruments was his eventual job.
Oh, all right.
And they made good. His name was Pat Montgomery. Married, they had a son and a daughter. Candy was fun as hell. Just loved to dance, loved to have parties, outgoing, athletic. By this time that they all are meeting, like 77, 78, she's got the perm. She's rocking a perm. Mm-hmm. She's wearing tight clothes. Everybody loves Candy. And Candy's
just the opposite.
Right.
Yeah.
She's out, she brings people together. She's a uniter, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And there's this little Methodist church that hires a woman to be their pastor. And people are at first, a woman in a job? It's really kind of this very mellow church. This is not a Bible thumping church. This is for everybody here, by the way, is an agnostic at best. Like they're not super, they're not zealots.
Yeah, I think people forget, like, church was also like a social thing for people. It's how the community got together. Like, right. It wasn't always about like, I super love the Lord. That's fine if you love the Lord. But like for a lot of people, it's where they meet their neighbors and like get together and get to know each other and meet new people.
Right.
I don't do that. I consider breweries to be the place where I go to meet my people. I was
going to say, some places it's the pub.
Right.
Right.
That's mine.
Yeah. But a lot of places in Texas is a very spread out kind of place. Yeah. And it's also a lot of places are dry communities, so there's no booze there. So it tends to be and I know this, I have friends that grew up in Texas, like in a lot of communities, are sort of like, where do you go to church on Sunday? That's just the question. Yeah. And so people do try to find one to go to, and people that's, Catholic church or whatever. So there's this Methodist church, and they hire a woman, and everybody loves this woman. Like, she becomes very popular. Like, her sermons are really popular, and everybody starts showing up at this thing. And then Candy and Betty, their daughters are the same age, and they become best friends. And they're in gymnastics and dancing. And so they're just showing up at the same stuff. And Betty gets like the terrible edits and everything. She never really lost the weight from her first pregnancy. And by that, I mean, it's 1978. She was probably like 140 pounds. Like, I mean, she's just like, they always describe her as kind of dumpy, and she's kind of frumpy.
She's so frumpy.
And it's like, people didn't take a lot of pictures then. She probably was tired, and it's just a different everything.
Yeah. She gets the frumpy edit.
It's not fair, I don't think. Mm-hmm. And I didn't include it in the show notes, but there's this one thing I saw on YouTube, and it was a show called The New Stepford Wives or something like that. And it was different murder cases of a woman murdering another woman. And it was
that sounds like a kink. It sounds like somebody's into that.
Yeah. And it was so like reimagined in such an awful way. Like, they didn't even bother to try to make it seem like it takes place in 1980. And they made the Betty person like this, like she's so frowning, and looks like just like Marla Hooch in the movie, the baseball movie, A League of Their Own. Like, Marla, like, would she be in the outfield? Like, that's what she looked like. Like, she just looked permanently like, right. And so the Betty's always kind of given that frumpy edit. And Candy's always looked like she was sassy and fun and like a hair commercial.
Right.
So Candy thrives in this community. She helps create the Bible school for the vacation in the summer. She puts together a choir. She loves all this. She doesn't work. Her husband works. She's a stay-at-home mom, but he makes $70,000 a year, which at the time is equivalent to $300,000 a year.
Right.
So they're
rich.
They're rich. They're doing really well.
Yeah.
And she's got 2 great kids, and they're all like having a grand old time. Betty and her husband, she wants to have another baby, and she's very specific. It's got to be like end of June, early July. So Alan and her husband sort of like, Alan's like, their sex life was not great.
Yeah.
For him. He was like, she's so anxious, and she puts a lot of pressure on him. Like, okay, we got to do this now. Like,
sounds sexy. Yeah, not sexy.
And one time she was really aggressive about doing it. Like, okay, the baby's asleep. We got to do it right now. And he was like, I'm so tired. I can't right now. And then she burst into tears.
Oh,
And it was like a real like awkward occasion. And he didn't. It's just like, and how do you handle that moment? Like, it's like everybody just his heart is like feels bad, and it's just yeah. Because you're allowed to say no. You're allowed to say like, I'm just
for sure.
Yeah. So there's volleyball at this church, Sonia.
Of course there is,
and it's co-ed, men and women playing together, and it's the 70s. So we're talking short shorts, sleeveless tops. Headbands that you go around your head.
Nice.
Around your wrists, sweatbands.
Yeah, let's get physical.
There we go. That's what it looks like. And Alan and Candy are really into volleyball. And they're both jocks. Like that's like how they get their rocks off. Candy, by the way, is super.
How they get their rocks off.
Seriously, he's bored with his sex life with his wife.
I haven't heard that saying.
Really?
In a while. It cracks me up. All right, go. I'm sorry.
I was just reading the Anthony Bourdain book, so that was one of his expressions. Really bummer of a book, by the way.
Oh, I suspect so.
And Candy at this point, by the way, 28 years old, and she's like, I've never had great sex in my life. I mean, Pat's cool and all, and life is good, but I want to see fireworks. That's what she says. I want tantric sex. I want to have an orgasm that lasts for hours. I want to feel the earth move under my feet. I want to feel the sky come tumbling down.
I don't want to have an orgasm that lasts for hours. That sounds tiring.
Outside of sleep, I don't want anything that lasts for hours. That's just me. But Candy is not. But it's the 70s too.
Yeah,
there's a shift. I mean,
yeah, but there's a women's liberation. Like abortion is now is legal. Birth control is widely available. Like there is like a sexual awakening for sure.
And discos are coming out.
Yeah,
swingers, gay culture starting to slowly kind of peek out from the culture. Three's Company's on the air. Charlie's Angels.
Yeah,
it's kind of like these are things.
It's a groovy time, man.
Yeah, it's post Vietnam, but it's before Reagan. Kind of think about it that way. And Candy's kind of feeling herself, and so one day she's playing volleyball with on a team with Pat, and then with Alan, and then she and Alan, boom, they crash into each other. And she's like, they're like, oh, excuse me. And she can smell Alan's sweat on her. And she's like, she's turned on.
Oh.
Like nobody's business.
Okay.
And she's looking at him and he's like, got a little bit of a paunch and he's going bald. No personality. He's nice enough. Like he's always friendly and stuff. But she's like, maybe he's like a tiger, a freak in the sheets. Like,
maybe.
So she's like, So she's also known to be extremely direct with people.
All right.
So afterwards, everybody kind of like goes back. When the game's over, they're going out to their cars, and she goes over and she leans into his car. And she goes, "I just want you to know, I can't stop thinking about you, and I want to have an affair with you." So if you're interested, let's have a talk about this. And she just goes away. And he's like, so he's thinking about it. Yeah. And he's thinking about it and thinking about it. And he thinks about it for a couple of weeks. And then he goes back to her and he says, okay, I'll talk about it some more with you. And she says, okay. And she says, okay, I just want a physical relationship. I don't want any emotional. I don't want anything like that. This would
No
just
catching feelings. Got
no
it.
feelings. This is sex. This is physical. Let's get physical. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, okay, but what if we develop feelings for one another? And she says, not going to happen.
She's all, don't be gross.
She's like, I'm sorry, my watch is talking to us. It's
Not now, watch.
Yeah, the Apple Watch is like, I can't play that song in your library, the physical song. Anyway, shut up, Apple Watch. Okay. So they make a list on a whiteboard, and they're like, why and why not to have an affair? And let's just say the whys outlasted the whys not, outnumbered the why nots.
This is the most logical.
She's very practical.
I've never heard of this. Okay. Well,
so they wrote it out, and she said, okay, they decided. And then afterwards she said, okay, these are the rules. No feelings. We will meet every other week on a Tuesday or Thursday because that's when my kid has swimming. It'll be at lunchtime. He had a 2-hour lunch, by the way, y'all. Just think about that. 2 hours.
decadent.
No phone. No, I know. What was his job? I will bring the lunch. I'll bring a picnic basket. She will bring that.
Picnic basket.
I'll bring the picnic basket. It'll be at a motel. I'll arrange it, but we'll split the costs for everything. But the second somebody gets feelings, we'll end it. And whoever wants to end it, the other person will just accept it.
Mm-hmm.
No weekends, no holidays.
And I put together this deck for us to review.
Exactly. Here's my
I'll give you
slideshow.
I'll give you a performance evaluation after every time we get together.
Funny you should mention that, Sonia.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
So, they kind of shake hands on it. And December 12th, 1978, they meet up at a Motel No-Tell. And she brings a picnic basket, and she's wearing pink lingerie underneath her clothes. He shows up, they eat the food, and then they get to business. And
Sounds
she
romantic.
writes in her journal, she says, he's not that experienced, he's not that great, but he might be worth training. I could probably teach him some stuff.
Performance review.
But he seems really nice. And
he's eager to learn.
He's eager to learn. He seems like an eager student. By the way, around this time, he finds out Betty's pregnant.
Of course.
And so they continue on. This goes on for about 9 months. And around June, he says, my wife's due in about a month. I should probably stop this. He's such an asshole.
Yeah, I'm about to be busy.
Yes.
By busy, I mean not helping with the baby at all. And that's a full-time job.
Right. And at first Candy's like, no, come on, we could still do this. This is, and she didn't even really like the sex that much with him. It was just more of like getting away with something.
Yeah.
That's what she said.
Okay.
Like it was the thrill and it was just getting away with something. But he was like, no, he really felt bad about it. So they cut things off in June. And then in the middle of June, Candy throws a surprise baby shower for Betty in her home.
Oh,
right.
nice. Were Betty and Candy like friends?
Yeah.
Other than the like their kids were friends?
No. Like their kids were best friends, but they weren't.
Yeah.
No.
So
They were
probably
friendly. They were friendly.
Yeah.
But Candy was the social person. Everybody treated Betty like she was kind of weird and kind of awkward and kind of shy. They were nice to her. This is Texas. Everyone's nice to each other.
Yeah.
But nobody really included her in things. She would always turn
Right.
people down too. Let's just say that. She was very,
Right.
She stayed home. Like if she wasn't going to go someplace with her husband, she stayed home. So it was but two things. the pastor that they all loved left the church to go to, because she got a bigger gig. And they said Betty cried her eyes out. She was so just bereft. She was so destroyed by that. And then secondly, they said that the next time they saw her super emotional was at this party because she didn't realize she had friends. She had no idea that people cared about her. She was so in shock. I know.
Candy's not her real friend, is she?
No. Candy was doing it to kind of like be an asshole too. Like just, yeah. She was rubbing it in his face. So
yeah, sounds familiar.
Yeah. So all the friends are there and they give her a really nice party. She was really flattered by it. And then a couple of weeks later, she has her baby, her second baby, and that's in July. And they end their fling.
Okay.
And then in the fall, Candy starts up a fling with a new guy that she picks up. And it turns out that guy turns into quite a stalker and gives her almost like exposes her to her husband.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And so she manages.
Here comes the consequences.
And she manages to untangle herself from him, but it's pretty precarious. Right. For a second there, and then she realizes like, oh shit, I could lose everything. Like this is just, I gotta wrangle myself in. She still occasionally tries to flirt with Alan but he's like, no. And also what happens with Alan and Betty is she realizes, ever since I've had this baby, you don't want to have sex with me. And she's like, I miss it. I miss being close to you. And he said, I want to save our marriage. I really want to work on this. And their new minister that nobody really liked except for Betty. And he was actually kind of stiff, kind of awkward, kind of weird with people, like things the way he liked things.
Yeah.
He and Betty kind of understood each other. And he said, there's this thing called Empower Weekends. And you go with your spouse and you just work on your marriage. It's very hardcore, but it seems to work for people. And it's like a Methodist church thing. Thing, excuse me. So it's in Dallas. So they go to this thing for the weekend. They come back and they're like a new couple. Both of them. Like they have better communication techniques. Their sex life improves. They're much happier. Like it really, really improves to the point that whenever Candy tries to come on to him, he says, no, I'm a new man. This is over. I'm committed to my family, I've got a young child. I got it, whatever. Like this isn't happening anymore. So let's fast forward and it's June 13th, 1980. So the two daughters, like I said, are best friends.
Yes.
And they're staying at the Montgomery house, at Candy's house.
Okay.
It's the summer. The kids are out of school. The husband is going off on a business trip to Minnesota, St. Paul.
Okay.
Betty's at home with a little baby who's just almost a year old, and she's feeling the blues again. It's summer. He's gone. And her daughter is kind of feeling it, like mom's kind of checking out. And she spends a lot of time at the Montgomery house because she can really feel like her mom's.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Candy notices it too. So she kind of encourages her to stay over. But nobody knows how to help her. And nobody would talk that time. Like nobody knew what to do for people. And she doesn't have friends. She doesn't reach out.
Right.
Her family's in Kansas. They don't know. I mean, nobody knows. But anyway.
It wasn't a common thing that people talked about. And also when things are hard like that, people become afraid of saying the wrong thing, so they don't say anything at all. Yeah.
And it's that stoic Midwestern kind of background too that she had, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. June 13th, Candy's at Bible school and she's arguing with the new pastor about how to do things and
like you do.
Like she does. And that night they're going to see the new Star Wars Empire Strikes Back movie.
Yes.
Yes, right. And Betty's daughter is super into Star Wars and she really wants to see the new movie, and Betty's not going to take her because she has a baby. She can't.
Yeah. So
she says, Mom, can I stay over? They said they'll take me with them. And she says, sure, stay over. That's fine. So she's staying for a couple of days.
But no spoilers. Got it.
Oh, by the way. So she says, but then the girl says, oh, but you know what? I have swim lessons in my swimsuits at my house. And so Candy's like, oh, no worries. I'll just drive out and get your swimsuit in between doing this and doing that and getting a Father's Day card. Don't worry about it. Okay. So Candy drives out to the house to get the swimsuit. And she goes there, and Betty greets her at the door, and she comes in, and they're just sitting and talking for a couple of minutes. And Candy's like, I got to go. I got to go to the Target. Got to get some cards. How are you doing?
Yeah.
And Betty's just kind of being really quiet and really whatever, like really kind of just staring at her and talking slow. And all of a sudden, Betty looks at her and just says, are you having an affair with my husband?
Oh.
And Candy said, no. And she says, but you did, didn't you? And she said, yes, but I have to tell you, it's been over for a long time. We're both really sorry. He loves you. It was a mistake. And Betty's like, okay. So Betty leaves the room and then comes back with an axe.
Oh, shit.
And she has the axe like awkwardly by her side. And she said, you can't take him from me. And I'm paraphrasing now. But
Yeah.
she says along the lines of, he's mine. You can't take what's mine. And
I
Candy's,
didn't know this is where this story was going.
Yeah,
though.
I know.
Okay.
That escalated quickly. She's saying, you can't take him. He's mine. And Candy's like, I don't want him. You can have him. She goes, you can't take him. It's just, I don't want him. They're going back and forth. She goes, it's over.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. And then Betty goes, okay, follow me to the laundry room and I'll give you her bathing suit and I'll give you a towel. So they're kind of like, okay. And and this is where you kind of have to take Candy's version of things.
Yeah.
Candy and Betty go to the laundry room and they're taking the bathing suit, they're folding a towel, and then Candy says Betty all of a sudden swings the axe at her and misses. And then they're fighting and they're struggling. And at one point she says Betty whacks her and the blade comes down on her toe, on Candy's toe. And she's wearing like rubber sandals, so her feet are out. And she's like, ow! And then she screams. And then I forgot to tell you something important.
Okay.
When Candy was a kid, she sliced her face open on her lip. You know that spot between your nose and your lip?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, there. If you split that open, it bleeds like crazy. This happened to my friend's son when he was little. So it happened to her, and it was like on a piece of glass. Something happened at home, and her mom took her to the hospital. And she said she was laying there, and they were trying to stitch up her face, and she was screaming like crazy. And her mom made the shh thing where she put her finger up to her lips and said shh, and said, please stop screaming. You're making a spectacle. And she said it just made her so angry that her mother said shh like that.
Yeah.
All these years later, they're in this laundry room and Betty's got this axe and she swings on it, whacks at her toe. Candy screams and then Betty just goes shh.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then Candy goes bah, and they're wrestling for this axe. And according to Candy, they fight back and forth. And they always say, like, you know, Betty was this big woman. How could she fight against this little woman? And she's like 140, maybe 150 top. I mean, it's not like, please, like, Hulk. Like, she's She-Hulk.
She's not She-Hulk. Exactly.
It's really ridiculous. But anyway, so they're fighting. In the end, Candy whacks Betty 41 times with the axe. 41, mostly at her head, and it was said that 40 of them, she was still alive. Like Betty
Jesus
was
Christ.
fighting back. Betty was kept like trying to reach for her. Betty did not go quietly.
Yes.
Or quickly. It was a fight.
And all of this is Candy's version, right?
Yes.
Even the fact that Betty would bring an axe out in the first place.
Yes.
Is all Candy's version.
Well, it was in the garage, and it was in it was Alan's garage. Like it was in his tool chest or whatever the hell it was. Like it wasn't right. It wasn't like in the living room. Like it's an axe. Like where would else would it be? So Candy tries to clean up. It's kind of messy now because it's like all over the living room and everything. She goes into the shower because she's covered in blood, and she tries to shower off. She's wearing her clothes and she showers off as much as she can. And then she just books. She leaves the house.
Yeah. Okay.
And she goes and she brings the bathing suit and the towel.
And the baby still in the house?
She leaves the baby behind. She leaves the dogs in the backyard.
Okay.
She goes to the Target to pick up some cards. And then she goes to the church to pick up the kids. And then she goes home. And she doesn't tell anybody anything.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Alan, had gone to St. Louis and had called home several times. He left like 9 a.m, and his wife never picked up. And he's getting concerned. And she had done it before. He had called home and she wouldn't answer because she was mad or, passive aggressive. She was just kind of like, you left me again.
Mm-hmm.
I'm mad at you. And he thought that's what it was. And then he started calling people. Like he found out his older daughter was staying at the Montgomerys. He's like, have you guys seen her? And Candy's like, no, I was there. I picked up a bathing suit. I don't know where she is. He's calling all the neighbors. And there's one guy that's home that's taking care of his 3 kids. And they're really little. And he admits, like he called me and he said he wanted me to check the house. And the guy was like, I was scared because I'm like, that doesn't sound good. So he asked a couple of neighbors to come with him. And one of them had a gun. And they went to the house.
Okay.
And this is like 10, 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And they looked at the house and they call Alan. And they're like, we don't hear anything. And Alan's like, I'm begging you, please look. Because I'm now really worried about my daughter.
Mm-hmm. So we're talking about a 1-year-old baby.
1 year old.
Maybe
yeah.
one. Yeah.
So finally, they realize the front door's just open, unlocked. And they go through the front door, and then one of them, they hear the baby. So they go and they see her, and she hadn't been eaten. She hadn't eaten. She hadn't been changed. She'd been in her diaper all day.
Poor baby.
Poor baby. The dogs were out back barking, and then they found Betty. And immediately they all, obviously were freaked out.
Yeah.
They thought she committed suicide. They thought she shot herself because she was so.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. People don't hit themselves 40 times with an axe, but
no.
They didn't know that.
They didn't know. They thought it was a shotgun blast. That to them, that's what it looked like.
Yeah.
So it's horrible. Alan calls while they're there. And then one of them picks up and says, Alan, I'm so sorry. Your daughter's okay. I know.
That's awful.
The police come and they get the baby, they're taking care of her. And then the next couple of days, they find a footprint and they find a thumbprint. It's 1980, so there's no DNA.
Yeah, this isn't CSI shit, by the way.
No CSI shit. And they see it's a really small footprint, like a size 5 woman. Mm-hmm. So it's got to be somebody petite. And they're trying to figure out the only person. There's one neighbor that says they saw Candy at the house at like 11 a.m. or noon. Okay. And she's the only person they knew that was there. So they're kind of asking Candy. And she's kind of like, oh, I don't know. I was there. We talked. No, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, they got her to come in and give her fingerprints. And they figured out it was her. And she confessed.
I'm wondering, how did Betty know that they were having an affair? Did Alan confess to her at some point?
She must have guessed it, I think.
Yeah.
I think she must have guessed it. I think she must, I don't know. Maybe somebody gossiped to her.
Yeah, it could be like gossip. Maybe it's probably that. There's also women's intuition.
Women's intuition. I don't know. I think because it was months later. It would have been over for a while.
Right.
So she might have
It's probably
suspected at the
gossip.
time. And it might have been like the first time they'd been alone together in a long time.
True.
And so she just was like, out of the blue, just, you
Yeah.
know, I'm going to ask, you know.
Yeah.
Alan's out of town.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Candy confesses, but she pleads that she was defending herself. Mm-hmm. Right. 41 times she...
Yeah.
Yeah.
That seems excessive.
She gets a really good attorney to defend her, and they put her under hypnosis, which is also a very 1980s kind of thing.
So 80s. Okay.
They put her under hypnosis 3 times, and this is always like Barbara Hershey played her in the 1990 TV movie, and Jessica Biel did this in this version. They have a thing where she's like screaming during her, you know, going into hypnosis, and they have to recall every single detail and the whole thing and all that stuff. But they really make it seem like Betty just bettied up, like Betty just lost her shit and she was just defending herself and nobody, you know, knows what happened. Mm-hmm. She goes to trial in October, so it's just a few months later.
Okay.
The jury took 3 days and they not guilty. Not reason of insanity, just not guilty. No manslaughter, not guilty.
Interesting. Is it? I mean, maybe you're going to get into this. Do they just think a nice lady with kids isn't capable of something like
She had
that?
never done anything before. Neither one of them had ever
Right.
had any history of violence. Neither one
Right.
of them. She's had no history ever since. She was very cold, Candy. She had no reaction to things. You know, she left that house and left a baby behind.
Yeah.
Like, people were pointing out stuff like, Betty's not here to defend herself. Betty, you know, she left a baby behind and didn't check on her. She didn't, like, leave the scene and then go to a phone booth, like, a few miles out of town and then call the police station. You know what I mean? And leave an anonymous tip or something.
yeah.
She left a baby alone. Like, that's pretty
Yeah.
fucked up. She was a mother. She knows, like, how
And she tried to cover it up. And
she tried to cover it up.
yeah.
It's overkill, I think, what she did. I don't think, like, manslaughter would be too far of a thing for her to be convicted for
Right.
it. But it was a big deal that it was not guilty. The
This is
town
fa-
was pissed.
I didn't know any of this. This
Yeah.
is blowing my mind. The story is not going where I thought it was going to go.
It was, and by the way, the jury was 9 women and 3 men.
Okay, that also fascinates me because you would think women would be a little harsher to her. Like,
People have really made a case for that. Betty gets the frumpy, boring edit.
Yeah.
She's just kind of this downer, you know. Candy was the exciting one, the interesting one, the sexy
Yeah.
one, the one that, you know, and then just like Betty just was jealous. Betty was whatever. And then Betty was the aggressor and she was just protecting herself from this big woman that was attacking her.
she's clearly a monster.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that's what, but the town itself didn't think that. And they were furious at this verdict. And they were not happy. So when she left, people were chanting, murderer, murderer. Like,
Oh my
It was
gosh.
a big fucking deal. So she and her husband, they left and moved to Georgia, where her family was, and her kids
Okay.
and stuff like that. They wound up getting divorced a few years later. Mm-hmm. Not shocking.
No.
Pat gave it a try, but I'm sure he was like, look, ultimately, this woman's going to kill me. I better just...
Yeah. I mean, he could have been afraid. She also cheated on him and
Yeah.
he clearly didn't trust her and doesn't know what she's capable of. So,
Yeah.
I get it. Makes sense.
She is now, or she became a family therapist with her daughter, and they had a practice together.
Therapists.
Betty's husband.
Not all therapists, by the way. Not
No,
all
no,
therapists.
no, not all therapists, but
No. But
between us. Betty's husband, Alan, just a few months after the trial, remarried.
Of course he did. Of course he did.
Yeah, a few years after that, her parents sued for custody of the girls and they won. So the girls wound up actually growing up in Kansas. And they're both doing great. And one of them works for a big corporation, really successful.
Yeah.
And the littler one, who was in the crib, she's fine.
Yeah.
She was totally fine, by the way.
Yeah.
She is a teacher. And she named one of her daughters after her mom. And they're doing great.
That's very sweet. The fact that he remarried and that a family court would still like take the children and put them with her parents is very telling.
Yeah, there's not a lot of information about him.
Yeah.
He kind of went off the radar for a while. So I don't know what was going on there. I don't know if he had somebody else that he was seeing.
Right.
When he, maybe he was a serial cheater. I don't know. It's
maybe,
maybe that's a whole story that we didn't know about, or maybe Candy ignited something in him that made, whatever. They wound up splitting up, and then he is now living in Florida, and he's retired. And I think his daughters have something of a parasocial relationship. But
yeah,
but they're okay. They're good. They're good.
I'm glad the kids are okay.
Yeah, that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
They're fine. They're good. But yeah, that's the story of the murder of Betty Gore by Candy Montgomery.
Dude, good job. I have not seen any of the things, so the story did not go where I thought it was going to go. Like, good job.
Isn't it
my
wacky?
friend. It's super wacky. I was not expecting that.
The first time I read that book, I was like, what? I think my mom had the paperback and I read it and I was like, what the hell is this movie? What is this story?
I got to watch that TV movie.
It's great. It's our Brian Dennehy.
Yeah, our old man crush.
Yeah.
Love him. Should we take a break and then we can hear about someone who's not a creep?
I think we should, yeah. I didn't realize how long I was talking.
This was one that was recommended by our group. And of course, she's been in the news lately. So let's talk about Angela Lansbury. She died recently in her sleep. That's why she was in the news. That was on October 11th. It was just 5 days before her 97th birthday. And Angela Brigid Lansbury was born in London, October 16th, 1925. She grew up in London. Her mother was an Irish actress and her father was a timber merchant.
Sure.
And why not?
I'm a lumberjack and I'm okay.
But he was also a politician who was the son of a Labour Party leader, George Lansbury. Eventually, like her mother and her siblings, they all moved to the United States. She was living in Los Angeles and she was into acting, by the way. It wasn't like she was just randomly discovered, but she was in Hollywood. She was at a party and a Hollywood executive saw her and thought she was beautiful and amazing and cast her in the 1944 film Gaslight.
Yes.
And she was 18. She's just 18. And she got an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress for that. She got 2 more Oscar nominations after that for The Picture of Dorian Gray. Really good movie. Mm-hmm. And The Manchurian Candidate.
She's fantastic in both those movies. Yep.
So good in that. She never won an Oscar, but she did get an honorary Oscar in 2013. She did a lot of movies. She did Bed Knobs and Broomsticks in 1977.
Mm-hmm.
And she was the voice of Mrs. Potts in the Beauty and the Beast. And she showed up most recently in Mary Poppins Returns, which I haven't seen, but I'm sure people love. I think she's most well known for playing Jessica Fletcher on Murder, She Wrote. And I mean, that show is insanely popular. It ran for 9 seasons over 12 years. She took up that role in 1984. She received 12 successive Emmy nominations for that role, but never won. She's like the Susan Lucci of primetime Emmys. She overall was nominated 18 times for Emmys and never won.
What?
Isn't that crazy?
That's a shunda. That should never happen.
Yes. She did eventually get so she got her honorary Oscar. She got a Lifetime Achievement Award from BAFTA in 2002, and she does have a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Couple of rando things that I thought people might like to know. Her daughter, Deirdre, was almost in the Charles Manson cult. Her daughter was had a drug problem and was really into heroin, and she fell in with Charles Manson and his followers, and Angela Lansbury recognized that he was a bad dude and that her daughter was down the wrong path, so she picked up everyone and they all moved to Ireland to get away from him. She saved her daughter's life, for sure. Also, when she was on Murder, She Wrote, she made it a practice to hire guest actors who were from the golden age of Hollywood that kept them in the Screen Actors Union so that they could keep their health insurance and their pensions.
Aww.
Isn't that first of all, the story's what a nice person for doing that. Also, it shows how fucked up our health system is. Our healthcare system is here in America. Keep that in mind, y'all, when you hear these quote unquote heartwarming stories of people doing things to help other people get health insurance or pay for surgeries that they can't afford. Those stories are fucked up because our healthcare system here is broken. But she did do that. I think that's amazing. She also was very active in a charity called Abused Wives in Crisis. And she was very active in raising money for that. She cared a lot about domestic abuse survivors. She also worked a lot to raise money for rehabilitating drug use, rehab centers. Sorry, that's what I'm trying to get to. And she was a very early vocal advocate, raising money for HIV and AIDS. She's a gay icon for a reason.
She's a Broadway icon. Yeah.
Yeah. And she did a ton to raise money so she would do all these charity shows. She raised a ton of money for, I'm looking it up here, the American Foundation for AIDS Research and the Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS. She was very instrumental in getting the word out and raising money for that. And she just seems like a really awesome person that everyone loved working with. Everyone's sharing all their stories on Twitter about what it was like to work with her. And she's rad. It makes me want to watch Murder, She Wrote.
My mother, that was her favorite show. She did not miss a week of that show.
Yeah. I mean, there were all these, by the way, there was I think there's 3 shows. It's Murder, She Wrote, Diagnosis Murder, and Matlock.
Matlock!
It's these Matlock, this idea of the old person solving crime show. Because Matlock was Andy Griffith, and then Diagnosis Murder was Dick Van Dyke, and then you had Murder, She Wrote with Angela Lansbury, and they were those shows are very comforting. Let me just say that.
We're gonna have our shows when we're that age. We're for sure gonna have shows like that.
For sure.
Yeah. I heard a story about her, and it was one of the big earthquakes in LA was around the time they were filming Murder, She Wrote.
Mm-hmm.
And they had sent the crew home early because there was an earthquake.
Yeah.
And supposedly she called everybody in the crew to make sure they were okay.
That's a decent human.
I mean,
we're talking
above and beyond. Like, nobody does that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not in Hollywood.
No.
That's for sure.
I mean, she's just exceptional.
Yes. I know there was a thing recently where somebody, in an interview, she was talking about like sexual assault and domestic abuse and all this stuff. And I think something she said got taken out of context, and where she was saying stuff about how like women, we all put a lot of effort into like looking beautiful and things like that. And sometimes we attract like unwanted attention or whatever, and then we can get assaulted. She wasn't saying women stop trying to look beautiful, but like some people took it out of context, and she issued like this very thoughtful statement that was like, all the years I've done work for like raising funds for domestic abuse survivors, it's like, please do not take what I'm saying out of context. Here's what I was explaining. And like, she handled it like a grown-up would.
Right.
You know, explain. She didn't call anybody names or like get defensive or anything. It was just, that's not what I was saying. Here's the context. You know, it was very well done. I think she seemed like a real class act.
Yeah.
And definitely a good non-creep.
She's excellent, and she was amazing in Sweeney Todd. That's one of my favorite musicals, and I love looking at old clips of her on YouTube. That's one of my favorites.
Yes.
She was batshit in that. It was so good.
I think people think of her as someone who was born old. We've talked about this before on Dorking Out, the Wilford Brimleys and even the Brian Dennehy's, right? Where they're born old. Angela Lansbury was not born old. And if you go and look at pictures, hot stuff. She was hot stuff. But she did play older people earlier in her career than others. Like,
she in The Manchurian Candidate, she plays the mother of the lead, and she's only like 8 years older than him or something.
Seriously, it's ridiculous, but
she's
so good in it.
Actor, like she took the gig because she she's great. Oh, good choice, Sonia.
Thank you.
So since you mentioned Dorking Out, why don't you tell them what we're covering next? That's our other podcast, by the way, where we dork out about movies and then pop culture stuff that we're checking out for the week. So what's the movie we're going to be doing? We just talked about it before we went on the show. Before we recorded this episode.
We are going to do The Sixth Sense, which I'm kind of itching to revisit. It is Scary Movie Month. If this movie does a whole thing, hashtag Scary Movie Month, and everyone writes 7-word reviews. And so for October, we're only doing scary movies. And I'm really looking forward to going back and revisiting The Sixth Sense, because once you know the twist, I'm curious, like, how does it? There's a twist? Huh? Like, I would like to revisit and see how it holds up for me when I know the ending. And also just as someone who's a little older with a son of her own, like I'm wondering how it's going to play for me. So it's going to be a good conversation. I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh, good point. Okay. Well, be sure to follow us on all the things that I mentioned at the top of the show. We love it when you use the Annie Potts GIF. We got one from the Ghostbusters when you have a suggestion for a creep or a non-creep. You can send us an email at whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com. Once again, my book is called Filmed in Brooklyn. It's available wherever books are sold. And Sonia.
Get it?
Yes, please. And Sonia, where can they find you?
You can find me at thesoniashow.com and The Sonia Show on Twitter and Instagram and the TikTok. Where can people find you, Margot?
You can find me at Brooklyn Fit Chick for Twitter and Instagram. My blog is brooklynfitchick.com. And I'm on the TikTok at Margot Donahue. Everyone, please be safe out there. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Don't be a creep. Don't get a perm.
Thank you for listening to us talk about creeps. You can follow us at What a Creep Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
But don't follow us too closely.
You can email us your creepy stories at whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com.
But please keep your dick pics to yourself.